Thank you, Zoom Siri. One of these days, we're going to be able to gun up an AI and just say, AI, do the show for us. And we can just sit here for 2 hours while AI does our work for us.
Wouldn't that be delightful? And
But
also,
but what fun would that be?
I know.
Uh, but I ramble because I'm supposed to be here welcoming everybody in podcast land here to our show because we are back with another episode of Different Strings, a guitar adjacent podcast. I, of course, am your host, Wes, along here with my co-host, Andie. Please, Andie, say hello to everybody in the whole world.
Hello, everybody in the whole world.
Fantastically done, as always. Our topic, ladies and gentlemen, this week is Taylor Swift and the cult of influential guitarists. But first, Andie is going to tell all of you where you can find us on the internet.
Yo, listen up. You can find us if you're watching on YouTube. Congratulations, you found us. While you're here, please hit the notification bell and subscribe and like. It really helps YouTube know that we're worth watching. And we are definitely worth listening. Wherever you find podcasts, just search Different Strings Podcast and you'll find us. Go on the web at differentstringspodcast.com. And while you're there, feel free to email us your questions, concerns, rumors, gossip, hate mail, all that stuff. And we'll be sure to bring it up on the show and embarrass you.
I like that. And we're gonna jump in. We've got an opening act that is connected, if you will, to our headliner. And you'll find out why, because we're going to be talking about this a lot today, this time essence period. I don't know. Andy, you want to hit me? We've got a two-part headliner. We've got two related questions, similar but different.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to answer first or do you want to ask the question?
I will ask.
All right. In
So
that
I'm gonna,
case, bring it on. I'm ready.
all right, I'm gonna hit you with this. Which guitarist or guitarists, plural, most influenced your decision to take up the instrument yourself, and why and how
And
and
why
when?
and how. Um, I love an open-ended question because I can't just say yes. And I'm going to say right now that this answer may be different than one I've given before, and that's because I actually put some real thought into it.
Unlike
I
before.
wanted, unlike before, a lot of times I'm just answering off the cuff, right? So it's the first thing that pops into my head. But what was I doing? I was trying to think where I was when I was 15 years old and finally made the real decision to ask my parents to find me some kind of a guitar that I could play.
Okay.
And I was in a situation where I had grown up overseas. I lived in Europe where being a rock star wasn't really a big thing amongst my friends. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody that was a musician other than my mother who played piano and sang. I had at that point only ever played piano, but then when I was 15 years old, we moved back to the States right in the middle of the summer. And the people that we were staying with had MTV.
Oh,
So I was listening to Top 40. I listened to what my parents listened to. So I listened to Barry Manilow and Neil Diamond and Barbra Streisand and the Beatles and a bunch of folk music from the 60s. And And Queen. I liked Queen. I said the Beatles. Um, a couple other bands, maybe. I had bought a couple albums, but mostly what I listened to was what was on Top 40 radio. Casey Kasem, that was the thing we got every Saturday. Everybody listened to Casey Kasem on the radio because the rest of the week it was all military people talking garbage on the radio. It was, anyways. So we got back to the States and I got to watch MTV and I saw Rat and Iron Maiden were the two that popped out at me in my memory. So in Rat, we've got Robin Crosby and Warren DeMartini.
Mm-hmm.
And in Iron Maiden, we've got, at 1984, we got Dave Murray and Adrian Smith,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't think anybody can deny the talents of these guys. But the guy that really jumped out at me was Robin Crosby, because he was this big, awkward, hairy dude who was way too tall and he was kind of chubby. And I remember seeing the video for Round and Round and thinking, well, holy shit, if he can do that, so can I.
Mm.
You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
I had already been cut from the football team, so I didn't have anything else to do. So
Mm.
I started playing guitar. And I was listening. I loved Iron Maiden, but I had to listen to them in secret because my mother was really religious. So I had to hide the album covers basically and listen with headphones. So she had no idea what I was listening to. And I liked Iron Maiden because their songs were about stuff that I was into, history and magic and mythology and,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
you
like,
know,
they're not exactly Satan worshipers. They wrote a lot about war, and you're into that
yeah, yeah,
European
yeah, they
history.
did. And Rat songs were about trying to get laid. And as a 15-year-old, I was kind of into that too. But it was that connection where I saw people who, I mean, these are not beautiful people in a traditional sense. Nobody, I don't think anybody would look at Robin Crosby and Warren DeMartini and Dave Murray and Adrian Smith and go, holy shit, I got to get me some of that, if they weren't guitar players. You
Fair
know,
enough. Fair enough.
I mean, Robin Crosby, rest his soul, was an awkward dude. I mean, he was 6.5 feet tall and he was a big dude.
It was a big
Now,
deal.
at this time, I wasn't 6.5 feet tall, and I still am not. I was under 6 feet, but I was a big dude. I didn't get to over 6 feet until I was about 18 or 20, you know? Anyways, those guys are they influenced my decision to play guitar. They were the ones that I saw playing and I thought, I want to do that because they do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the music. Let's be serious about that. I loved the music. And
Yeah.
I thought I could play like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can play a bunch of Rat songs and I can play a good double fistful of Iron Maiden songs. I can't play the leads like they did, but I can play the songs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know you've told me about yours, and I actually remembered who your guys were because you also are were influenced by a team. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So just a couple years before you discovered, or just before you had this epiphany, I had a similar one. So I think it was 1980. I want to say either late 81 or early 82. I want to say late 81 because that was my birthday's in November. And my father for my birthday, bought me one of those home stereos. If you recall, in the 80s, it was the all-in-one job. You had like a turntable, a cassette player, a receiver, all in one unit, right?
Yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah.
yep. And then, like,
Mine
two little
Mine
speakers.
had an 8-track instead of a cassette player.
Yeah, that was my mom had the one with the 8 track in it. When I got one, I was like, I want a cassette because I used to record the albums onto cassette.
Yeah.
Because you can't take an album with you, but you can take a cassette with you to a friend's house. Anyway, so when he bought me the stereo, he also took me to the local record store and said, pick 3 albums. And I did. So of course I picked, I didn't know any of the bands. I didn't know much about rock and roll back then. So I was picking strictly on the album cover, coolness,
Yeah.
um,
As you do.
as you do. Right. So I found and picked, which interestingly enough, like imagine like how that random decision influenced the rest of my musical tastes for the rest of my life, like those 3 albums. ELO's Time was the first one, Paradise Theater by Styx, and the answer to the question, Back in Black by AC/DC. So it
But
was
that cover has nothing on it. It's just it's just black.
None More Black. And I thought it was just great. Also, it was straight black and it was like embossed a little bit. So the
Yeah, yeah, the words popped out.
yeah, oh, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Um, and
That
so
ELO cover is really cool. I didn't know what it was. It's really cool. It's very like freaky, artsy. It almost looks like a Yes cover.
yeah, and it belies that album in particular belies the type of music that ELO had been known for. I mean, you think about, well, we're going to get off topic, but ELO, that album had a lot more synth on it than most ELO records.
Yeah,
So when I bought that record, it was extremely commercial, very poppy, lots of synth. And I'm like, oh, that's ELO. And then I heard their older stuff. I'm like, wow, this is really different for them. But it's
completely
still,
different.
I know, but it still had Jeff Lynne's like, layered vocals and it had the Jeff Lynne sound. But anyway,
Yeah.
so Back in Black, it was the Young brothers, Angus and Malcolm. Um, and I'll never forget listening to that album for the first time and just, 11 or 12-year-old me hearing that for the first time and just being totally blown away. And I knew that the sound I really enjoyed was guitar, but until that moment, I never heard guitar like that before. And
Hmm.
it was like, oh, if that's what it means to play guitar, then I want to do that. Because like before that, this is going to sound weird, but I actually had listened to Kiss a lot when I was growing up as a kid. But my appreciation for Kiss was never about their instrumentation. It was always about their makeup. I was a kid.
Yeah.
I never realized they were okay guitar players. I mean, but just it didn't make me want to play guitar. I listened to
Right.
Kiss. Yeah, I listened to Kiss because they were fun to listen to, but not, when I heard Back in Black for the first time, I'm like, I want to do that. I really want to do just that. However, I have to give um credit to Moving Pictures because I actually heard Moving Pictures first, and the right out of the gate, Tom Sawyer was the song that made me think I would like to play guitar one day. I would really
Yeah.
like to do that one day. But when I heard this album, it was like, okay, this is a done deal. I'm asking for a guitar tomorrow. Like that's next year's birthday gift, and that's exactly what happened. I said I really would like a guitar next year, and they waited it. They saved up for a year to get me that first guitar.
Well, that's how it's a
Oh,
beautiful story. Yeah, good. That's awesome. And yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many albums I bought just because they had a cool cover. And
all of
it
the
was
Iron
in the
Maiden
right bin.
albums. Oh, that's how I got into Iron Maiden. Their album covers,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
wicked.
So but this is a two-part question. I promise you a two-part question.
Hmm.
So let's hit the second part, which is similar but not the same.
Yeah, so now we know who influenced you to actually become a guitar player. However, now what I want to know is, okay, you've picked up the instrument, but which guitar player or players since that moment have had the most influence on your playing style? Most influence playing style. Very specific question.
Yeah, because so from listening to rap, once I started playing guitar, I picked up drop D,
Hmm. Okay, that's
right?
true.
You know, that they led me to drop D. Um, Iron Maiden, I can't play like those guys, so I don't play like those guys. But what they made me love was intricate metal and kind of the gallopy rhythm and the energy. And of course, they reinforced my love of harmonized guitar solos, which I picked up from Brian May, who
Mm,
is my 100% guitar hero. And he probably has had more influence on my playing than anybody else, right? I've dissected more Queen music than any other band. And even like a rando hears something that I've recorded and they go, wow, that guy really likes Brian May. You know,
mhm,
it's not hard to hear that influence in my playing. Um, even in the surf music, I can hear it, you know. Um, but I had another significant influence on my playing who isn't anybody famous. It isn't anybody that people would know. It's a guy called Todd Ingram, who was my first rock guitar teacher. You
mm,
know, like I had a guy before that that like taught me how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb and garbage like that. Um, but Todd was the first teacher I had who understood that I wanted to play rock and showed me how to do that. And when the thing that I got from him the most was when to stay on the beat and when to venture off of it. Because when it comes down to it, developing the feel for the instrument is has got to be almost as important as learning the notes and learning the techniques and the scales and all that stuff. You have to know how to implement it. And he had that feel, right? It's almost like he kind of taught me how to swing a little bit
mm,
instead of
mhm.
staying right on the beat all the time. Um, and to understand that. And you know, I lost touch with him a few years ago. We lived in the same town for a really long time, but I moved away and I don't even know what he's doing these days. So Todd, if you're by some miracle listening to this podcast, number one, thanks. Number two, reach out, man.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So when I think I know what you're going to say because I've listened to stuff you've recorded,
Uh,
um, that you've written, not just, you know, like, you know, normal stuff, but stuff that you've written and recorded all on your own. So
mhm.
why don't you say it and I'll tell you if you're right.
Okay. Yeah, so I'd say that probably the most influential would have to be John Petrucci from Dream Theater.
Accurate. I agree.
Yeah. Now, I say that I I've had to I've answered this question before just in random conversation. It's not like I get interviewed by anyone in particular, just friends talking, but I never say his name. I usually, if people ask who influenced me, I name the people that influenced him or other guitar players that I remember learning a lot from very clearly, like Stevie Ray Vaughan, who was very influential. However, I if I'm trying to be objective here, then I have to remove my personal bias. And there's a reason I'm saying that tied into this episode. Um, so removing my personal bias, I thought about the answer to this question and I realized that when people tell me, hey, when they hear me play, if they're people that are familiar with Dream Theater, John Petrucci is the name they conjure most. I don't think I sound like him. I don't think I play like him. I know I don't have his ear, his technical ability, his knowledge of the fretboard, none of that. Um, However, I did listen to them a lot for a long time. Um, and I definitely, for lack of a better term, stole a lot of things um from John, like, you know, his techniques on learning and playing modes and scales,
Hmm.
and how he keeps time during fast parts, and how he switches pickups on the fly very quickly, and how he blends multiple styles, and how he uses the tremolo bar, and just you name it. So, I realized that I took so much from him, that, and really, he also was, um, when I think influenced, I also think about influenced path, like direction. And
Hmm.
before him, I was listening to a lot of George Lynch. And what I liked about George was he blended um, blues playing with, like, hair metal. Take
Right.
the take those blues scales, crank the gain, lots of effects, throw in some other modes and things. Just take the blues up to 11. And I really liked George's style. He was wild. He was crazy. He used a lot of pinch harmonics, a lot of craziness. But when I heard John for the first time, it was like, okay, it was very controlled. It was methodical. It had meaning. It had purpose. Not that George isn't a melodic player, but John was melodic in a much different, he had a much different approach, more jazz influenced. And it completely changed direction of my playing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. George Lynch was probably the first guitar player where I recognized he was changing pickups.
mhm.
Like, and that's why it sounded like that, because he did that a lot in the middle of a solo. He would change pickups and it changed the tone.
George or John?
George,
Okay. Okay.
because he came way before John Petrucci.
Way before. Um, the other name that the name I think of lately, though, and the one, and also probably stole as much from this guitar player as John, if not maybe more, is Ty Tabor.
Oh, I was going to say Corey Feldman, but that's probably a way better. Yeah.
Corey Feldman. Ty Tabor. Let's see. What did I steal from Ty Tabor?
I've stolen a bunch of stuff from Ty Tabor.
Drop
I've,
D, open notes, drone notes, and things like that.
yeah, yeah.
Arpeggios, like playing through the chords, layering, um, his a lot of his modes, and like how he approaches solos, a lot of his bar work, which he took a lot from Jeff Beck, like, so much, using the volume control on the guitar, to change tones as opposed to using channel switching. I mean,
Hmm.
and also his groove, like, I wrote a bunch of songs that were influenced by King's X and their groove and their, funk and rock sensibilities. So I would probably say on any given day, I think I sound more like Ty than John, but people tend to think that I sound more like John. I don't know. Anyway,
Well, I'll tell you what, the reason that I gravitated towards Stratocasters is because of Ty.
yep, yep,
You know,
same
it
here.
didn't hurt. It didn't hurt that Dave Murray played them and that Warren DeMartini played super
Super
strats and that Brian
strats.
May played a guitar with three pickups, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's
So,
when I got my first strat after discovering King's X, and that's a straight line.
and then you were like, how come my strat doesn't sound like his strat? Oh, he's got one of those crazy strat elites. I should get one of those. And then you read about the strat and elite, and you were like, pass.
I owned a Strat Elite for a hot minute. It
Oh,
it was it was a weird guitar. I mean, I
yeah.
loved the way it sounded just like King's X, but the bridge was terrible.
Bridge.
The bridge was terrible, and the fretboard radius was a little flat for me at the time.
Mm. Let's talk about placement of that locking nut.
Oh yeah, mine didn't have the locking nut. It had been removed,
Oh,
so I had holes instead of a locking nut.
you're probably better off.
Um, yeah, but I probably didn't keep it more than 6 months or so, and sold it at a profit. So that's all I cared about.
Oh, all right, there you go. Well, so why all
Yeah.
this talk about influential guitarists and best
Well,
this and
I'm glad you asked, Andy, because for our headliner tonight, look at we're gonna look at a poll that was done, POLL, by a British music retailer called Guitar.
excuse you?
You're welcome. And they did a poll to find out who was the best guitar player of the last 20 years.
They
And I
did
think
not.
last 20 years is a kind of an important determiner, because that implies, not Eric Clapton, not Brian May, not Jimmy Page, not Jeff Beck, right?
Okay.
Um, and a lot of people freaked out when Taylor Swift popped up, not just on the list, Andy, but in the top 10.
In the top 10.
In the
Oh,
top 10, Taylor Swift came in at number 8 on the list of best guitarists of the last 20 years, according to the allegedly fine folks
all right.
at
Well,
Guitar.
well, let's
So,
clarify. It is not best, it is most influential.
well, and see, that's part of the problem, I think, and why it got so many people's attention. All of the articles about this poll said best. All of the headlines said best. All of the stories said best.
Mm.
But when you go back to the actual poll,
Hmm.
it's clear that their intention was influential. So what's the difference between best and influential? And that's why I wanted to talk about in the opener about influential. Now, I think that a lot of the people that we mentioned would also be on a lot of people's best guitarists list, right? I mean, I don't I mean, yeah, all of them would be.
Of the last 20 years.
Maybe not of the last 20 years, but certainly like of all time. Um, I don't know if anybody would single out Robin Crosby and Malcolm Young, but both really great guitar players in their own stead. So let's talk a little bit about your impressions of best and most influential. And let's also, I wanted to pardon me, I wanted to leverage your professional experience to talk about the poll,
Mm.
because you're a data cruncher.
Hmm.
And so I think you might have some opinions about that because, you know,
Well, excuse me. So, and I'm sorry for coughing. I'm still getting over COVID. I still have some
well,
symptoms.
don't let it happen again.
Okay.
I will reach through the screen.
And
So
beat you.
what is the best? What does the best mean?
Well, um, that is a very broad term and extremely vague. And
It certainly can be.
yeah, and best what? Like, how do you like there there's so what's the best color wallpaper? I don't know. White, yellow, red, blue, like best what? Like
Well, I can answer that question. The best color wallpaper is paint,
what's the
right?
best?
But so to me, best means identifiably excellent and more so than anybody else that does it. Like
Um,
we're in the middle of the Olympics, right?
mhm.
It's hard not to watch Simone Biles and think she's not the best at that right now.
Well, that's because if you, all right, best is a term that is not quantifiable or measurable. If you give me a metric, then I can tell you who's best in that metric. So if you
Right.
say, well, to me, best is fastest, I'd say, okay, well, then I don't think that's a, okay. And I'll even back up further. Fastest is not something that you would gauge in a poll. A poll is an opinion. They're trying to gauge opinion. And if you ask me who's the fastest guitar player, I would then say fastest at what? And then you would say, okay, well, let's just say for argument's sake, fastest at playing the C scale up and down the fingerboard. I'd say, okay, well, I mean,
Michelangelo Badio.
yeah, I mean, do we have actual metrics on that? Because have we actually tested who's so even there, it's unless you have numbers, saying
Right.
best is just it's too subjective. If you say best meaning best talent, I'd say, but how do you argue most talent? Uh, Maybe the best guitarist I've ever personally listened to is the
Mhm.
best in that group, but there might be guitar players out there I've never even heard of that are actually better than my favorite and best guitar player. So I mean, to me, best is too vague and it's not quantifiable. It's not
Yeah.
measurable. It's just to me, it's using a term like best is it's you just have to understand the subjectivity around it. And you certainly wouldn't ask someone who's the best at something in an opinion poll because best implies we're measuring and an opinion poll implies subjectivity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I can certainly see the argument for saying someone like Tobin Abasi is a better guitar player than I am.
if
I would make that argument. Now,
if you define,
he's
but if you, it depends how you define best. Best what?
dude, I've
Better?
seen him play.
Yeah. Does he play surf
Better
music better than you?
better at that. I'm sure he could if he put his mind to it. But I was about to follow that up by saying, you know, he he doesn't play the way I do. You know, I play at the limit of my capabilities at any given moment, and that comes through. Tobin, I assume, plays at the peak of his ability, which changes over time. We ebb and flow with our skills,
Mhm.
and he's doing what he is capable of doing, which is not necessarily something that I can do. But if he sat in with my surf band, it might sound like a hot mess.
Okay. So, I mean, if you're defining, in that case, you're defining best as, technical proficiency,
Sure.
musical knowledge, like book knowledge,
Right.
right? Arguably, he probably knows more about music theory than you and I have ever forgotten and applies it and can
Yeah.
speak to it. So if that's how you define the scale, better, good, better, best, then I would agree with you. He's better than us. And yet, if you asked the question, who would you rather listen to for 8 hours a day, you or him? I don't know. I don't think I'd say him. I don't know if I could listen to Animals as Leaders for 8 hours a day, but I know
Yeah.
I
I
could
don't.
listen to your music for 8 hours a day. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying best is you have to give
Subjective.
better parameters around what is best. And to me, just the word best in and of itself is just it leads to bigger other questions, deeper questions.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say most influential, you're actually getting closer to you're getting closer to asking a real question, because now you're saying, okay, now we're not just saying best broadly, you're saying the most influential, and how do you define influential? Is it
Right.
based on the number of people that have picked up an instrument because of them? Is it most influential in terms of influencing how someone plays or their style or their songwriting, or not really sure, but at least saying most influential, it gets you closer to something that's measurable to some extent. But I know that they weren't looking at statistics measuring. They're just, we
Right.
want your opinion. Who's the most influential guitar player of the last 20 years? Is possibly how they phrase the question. We don't even know. We don't know how they phrase the question, right? Was it a leading question? How did they phrase the question? So we don't really know how it was phrased. But my assumption is, let's work off the assumption that they said, who, in your opinion, is the most influential guitar player of the last 20 years? And apparently, according to this poll, Taylor Swift got the eighth most number of votes.
Yeah. So let me tell you who else was on this list, right?
And
So
you can't argue if that's, if you just polled that number of people and they voted, there's no arguing that that's who they voted for.
right,
So, right.
you tally up the names and you count them. So
Mhm.
here's who's on the list, right? Number one, John Frusciante of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, followed by Alex Turner of the Arctic Monkeys, who I thought were Arcade Fire, which shows you how little I know about them. Then John Mayer of that filthy looking guy who left Fender for PRS. So now PRS makes Strat copies. Plus, also, he sleeps with tons of hot women, including Katy Perry, who now has a kid with Orlando Bloom. That guy, John Mayer, you've heard of him?
No.
Okay. Uh, a dude called Sam Fender, who is a solo artist, stunningly not endorsed by Fender guitars, that I had never heard of and I had to look up. Johnny Greenwood of Radiohead. I know who he is. That's the top five. I'm not going to give you everybody on the rest of the list, but let's go through some more. Chris Shiflett from Foo Fighters, number six. Uh, Johnny's Radiohead pal Ed O'Brien, number seven. Tom DeLonge from Blink 182, number nine. Keith Urban, number 12. And I'll tell you this, unashamedly, Keith Urban, fantastic guitar player.
Okay.
John Five, who goes around playing Mick Mars's parts in Motley Crue songs these days, he's number 13. And Troy Van Leeuwen, who showed up on our offset list in the last episode, he's number 15. So there's two women on the list. Taylor Swift at number eight, and her, Her, at number 17. Now, I have no quibble with her being on any list of either. I would put her on a best guitarist list with the right parameters. She can definitely play, and whether or not she's one of the best is really up to kind of how old you are and what other guitar players you're familiar with. But we gotta get into this Taylor Swift thing, right? Because no matter what the poll actually said, the way it's being talked about is that Taylor Swift is the eighth best guitarist of the last 2 decades. Right. So let's
We're
you and
losing their
I,
shit over this.
yeah. And I mm, I know I've already got us into trouble talking about Aerosmith. So I
What?
want to come out and say
I don't know
I
anything
do
about that.
I do not hate Taylor Swift,
I don't either.
right? I don't I don't listen to Taylor Swift music. It doesn't resonate with me.
You're
It's
not you're not her target
shine
audience.
it's shiny and it's fun and it used to be country and now it's poppy, and I listened to over an hour of Taylor Swift music today to prepare for this.
Oh, okay.
because because a if 1,000 people think she's the eighth best guitar player in the world of the last 20 years, I think I gotta listen to that. And I want to repeat, I am not anti Tay Tay. 100%. I am not anti Taylor Swift.
Nope.
She is legit one of the biggest performers on the planet right now. She is raking in cash hand over fist. Her tour, that Eras tour, continues to go. It's a juggernaut, man.
Mm-hmm.
She is pulling in crowds that nobody has dreamed of, and she is selling out every venue she plays. She is selling out every single show at really outrageous ticket prices at some of them. Every time, every stop, every venue.
And
But wait, there's more. And what?
people are talking about her every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every day. She's
Yeah.
everywhere. Who is she going to
She's,
vote for? Who is she going to back up? Who is she dating? Like
yeah.
everything. She has just been part of the fabric of this country for so long. She is a household name.
Yeah. And she's recorded 14 number one records since 2006. She sold over 50 million records. 7 of her number one albums sold over 1 million copies the first week they were released.
Mm-hmm.
Her albums, I looked this up, her albums have spent more time at number one on the sales chart than any other solo artist in the history of the sales charts.
She's no joke.
She is absolutely no joke. But is she the eighth best guitar player? And I gotta say she is not.
Eighth most influential of the
Right,
last
but that's
20
not
years
what the headlines say. The headlines all say best. The
because
stories all say best
be,
because they're picking the wrong words. The words mean
because
things.
words mean things, and in a world where words mean things, um, comprehension is critical. And
We are
I
a
don't,
nation of idiots.
and we are a nation of idiots. And more importantly, we're a nation of clickbaity article titles that just give you a rage boner and make you want to click on it so that they can shove these pop-up ads down your throat. I mean,
Oh,
people are losing their shit over this poll, and it's like, does anyone take a minute to just process and do some critical thinking and also then
no,
maybe say, is this really worth typing up hate words
no,
on the
no,
internet?
they don't.
No,
No,
it's
they don't.
just okay.
Right.
People are
So
losing their shit over this.
they are. And here's the thing, right? Taylor Swift she's a strummer. She's a singer-songwriter and she's really good at it, right? She is well known for writing or co-writing all of her material,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would say one of the few true pop stars that can say that because most manufactured pop stars do not write their own material. And Taylor has always written her own stuff. Excuse me a second. uh, and I've seen a lot of pictures. She's in the news a lot. In her music, though, there are not a lot of guitar solos, and the ones that there are not amazing. And she doesn't play any of them because she's not a lead guitar player. She's a strummer. And I don't think strumming an acoustic guitar makes you one of the best guitar players in the world in the last 20 years or of all time or whatever, even if you make a metric ass load of money while you're doing it. And she is making a metric ass load of money, and good for her. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, because of the difference between best, which
Mm-hmm.
is what all these articles are saying and all these headlines are saying, and most influential. Because to me, influential means inspiring.
Yep.
And I wonder, because she spends a lot of time on stage with a guitar in her hands.
Yep.
Now she's also out there dancing and having a good time in her sparkly dress, but she picks up acoustic and electric guitars and plays them on stage in front of tens of thousands of people. And
Regularly
how
pictured with
many,
the guitar.
yeah, how many kids are looking at her and thinking, I want to be a guitar player just like Taylor?
Yep. How many?
And
And
they go home and they want it, they want a pink acoustic guitar,
mhm.
and their parents get it for them, and maybe they're the next Taylor Swift. Hell, maybe they're the next Malcolm Young. Maybe they're the next Dave Murray. It's got to start somewhere. I
Yep.
didn't pick up the guitar and start playing perfectly harmonized leads.
Nope.
I picked up the guitar and hacked at it like a hungry bear for
Um,
years before anything I ever played sounded like music.
yep. Yeah, I personal experience. Um, I worked in between jobs. I worked at Guitar Center for 2 months over the Black Friday holiday.
Oh, jumped right in, didn't you?
Yeah. Now I will preface this by saying this was only like a 60-day period. It was only one location, and that you cannot base what I'm about to say, or you cannot say what I'm about to say definitely applies to every Guitar Center of
Right.
all time. Okay. My 2 months there in the lead up to Black Friday, the most of the sales were parents buying their kids their first guitar. The ones I talked to, the predominantly were little girls, predominantly because of Taylor Swift.
And that
That
was
was
before Taylor Swift was massive.
that was 10 years ago,
Yeah.
give or take. That's all I'm saying. There was no one in there coming to me saying, my little boy wants to play because of Eddie Van Halen or because of Dream Theater or because of, Periphery or, but nope. Taylor Swift, Taylor Swift, Taylor Swift, Taylor Swift. Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what it was. And again, that was over 10 years ago before she was the juggernaut. She was popular 10 years ago, but
Sure. Absolutely.
arguably in the last 10 years, she has just absolutely catapulted to the stratosphere. So if you say most influential and she's in the top 10, I'd argue I'm surprised she's not even higher up the list.
Yeah. Right now, August 2024, I might say she's the most influential guitar player in the world right now,
You know,
but I wouldn't say she's the best.
not the most, technically proficient.
She's real good at the cowboy chords.
Mm-hmm. And she's a great songwriter. At least
Yeah. Oh,
if you want to
she,
say based on album sales, people clearly
and
like
yeah,
her, you know,
sheer popularity.
yeah,
Like
people
her,
clearly
her
like her
music,
material.
her music doesn't resonate with me, so I don't listen to it. I don't buy the albums. I don't go to the concerts. But I also don't think she sucks. That's
Hmm.
just, like I don't go see Exodus either. And they're in a genre that I actually like. I've never liked Judas Priest. I love Iron Maiden. I don't like Judas Priest. I've never liked them. I never bought a single one of their albums.
Interesting.
So, what you like is completely subjective.
Yeah. And
I
there's,
can art I can feel the Swifties throwing shit at me already.
well, but if they're listening to your actual words,
Yes, I would hope.
I mean, but okay, I feel like we've been dancing around a topic for a little while, and that is um the whole idea of this poll is it's sketch.
Oh, it's yeah. I feel like the point of the poll is clicks.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I don't think the folks at Guitar actually care who the best guitar player is or the most influential. I
What? You
think
don't
I think they are laughing all the way to the bank on ad revenue based on people walking through the door and looking them up on the website because of this poll.
yeah.
It was a
I,
marketing gimmick,
mm-hmm.
and they got us. Look here, we're sitting here doing a whole episode on this stuff.
Well, we're actually doing a reaction video to everyone losing their shit
We kind
over
of are.
Taylor Swift being voted the eighth most influential guitar player of the last 20 years. Um,
Yeah.
so it's funny, before you and I ever talked about this poll, I happened to see the Facebook post that,
Yeah.
because this is how it came to me. There was a Facebook post that was reporting on the poll in a biased way. Like
Yes.
they weren't just saying, "Hey, look, aren't we?" I mean, okay. Keep in mind, all of the headlines were Taylor Swift has been voted the eighth most influential guitar player of the last 20 years.
See,
What?
the ones I saw all said best.
Okay, I didn't see any
Guitar
bets, but here's my question
guitar
to you.
guitar.com music news, Taylor Swift eighth best guitarist of the last 2 decades.
But
Guitar.com. They should have more respect for us than that.
they should, and yet they don't. And my question to you is, when I say the phrase Taylor Swift voted the eighth most influential guitar player of the past 20 years, what is the first thing wrong with that sentence?
Voted.
Well, yep, there is no voting. That's true. What else is wrong with it?
Um, did they misspell Taylor?
No. I'll tell you what I hear that's wrong with it. Why are
Tell
they
me.
telling me why are they telling me who the eighth most influential is? Why not the most influential? I'll tell you why. Because
That's a great question.
telling me that the guy from the Red Hot Chili Peppers was voted first gets you 10 clicks. Telling me
Yeah,
that Taylor Swift was voted eighth.
10 million.
This is why this whole fucking thing is BS. Not
Yeah,
only is the poll BS, but the reporting on the poll is BS. Just
that's a great point.
the headline, Taylor Swift voted eighth, but they're purposely doing that to get you angry. Or if you're a Swiftie, to make you super happy. Either way, they look, if you read the first
You're hot
eight,
about this. You're hot about this.
if you read the first, I'm hot at the manipulation that the media is doing. And trust me, I know what I sound like. Old man yells at cloud. But here's the deal. If you look at the top 10 guitar players, old woman, I misgendered myself, John Frusciante, Alex Turner, John Mayer, Sam Fender, Johnny Greenwood, Chris Shiflett, Ed O'Brien, Taylor Swift, Tom DeLonge, and Simon Neil. Who are you picking out of those top 10 and saying that's the one that gets us clicks?
Yeah,
Taylor Swift.
yeah.
They cherry picked
Because
her name.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Out of the top 10 people, there's 3 of them I never heard of.
Yep, at least for me.
And I I don't listen to a lot of brand new music, but I'm no knucklehead. I like I said, I thought the Arcade Monkeys are the Arctic Monkeys were Arcade Fire. I didn't realize that was 2 different bands.
Okay. Here's the second problem with this poll. It was conducted by UK retailer Guitar Guitar in honor of
Alleged
yeah,
alleged retailer. I've never seen them.
in honor of a Fender exhibition.
Okay.
So I would argue that there's probably some bias. Like, if you're doing anything in honor of a specific brand, is there bias in that? How was the poll conducted? What was the question? Was it done in writing? If it was done on the internet, why only the UK? They only polled 1,000 people in the UK. Why, if 1,000's fine, why only the UK? So really what you're telling me is Taylor Swift was voted the 8th most influential guitar player in the UK among guitar players, because they only polled guitar players, and they only polled guitar players in the UK. And if they only polled in the UK, they probably did it in writing,
Mm.
right? So did people understand the question? How was the question phrased? Like, there's so many things wrong with the poll from a scientific perspective, that to put any credence into the actual results is a waste of time. That's all I'm saying. The only thing about this poll that makes sense to me is 1,000 people, because that's a statistically valid sample. However, the fact that they limited it to the UK means you can no longer, you can't, you can't tell me that Taylor Swift is the 8th most influential if you've only polled guitar players in the UK. There's guitar players all over the world.
Yeah.
You gotta, your population has to be larger, has to be broader, not bigger, like in numbers. Like 1,000 would have been fine if you did 1,000 across the world. Fine. Where are there large, you know, concentrations of guitar players? Not just in the UK. So the fact that it was done, there's no transparency, right? They didn't publish what the actual question was. They didn't publish the actual results. How many votes did everyone get? How do we know that the difference between number 7 and number 8 was really wide? What's the margin of error? Like, I know I'm asking ridiculous questions of a stupid poll, but if it's a stupid poll, then can we treat it like a stupid poll and not get our
Yeah.
knickers in a twist over where Taylor Swift landed? I mean, we gotta be okay reading it and go, oh, that's nonsense. I'm going to move on with my day.
But if we do that, Andy,
We don't have an
are we
episode.
really are we really fulfilling our purpose as people on the internet? If we're not yelling at somebody over something they said and being absolutely breathless about it,
Oh, yeah. Pearl clutching.
then
Taylor Swift, number 8.
yeah,
Where's
then
my favorite guitar player?
are we really doing what we're supposed to be doing?
I
And
mean,
I think the answer to that is no.
the answer is no. I mean, look, none of my favorite guitar players made the top 20.
um,
None of my favorite
no,
guitar players.
no,
And there's
not one.
only,
As a matter of fact, none of my top 100 favorite guitar players made this list.
yeah. And as I look at this list, I can tell you I have not been personally influenced by any of these players.
Not one of them.
Not one of them. Now, we're just two old people, but
Well, no, wait. I have to go back.
okay.
I have been influenced by John Mayer.
Have you?
He's the reason I hate sunburst guitars. And that's an influence. An influence can be negative.
Okay. Um, so I don't know, like, let's just like let's just be realistic here. I mean, I also think it's very disingenuous that the poll was around most influential and all of the reporting on it says best. That
Yeah.
also is very irritating to me, because, and that just proves more that people are not, they're reacting, they're not critically thinking, they're not, oh, Taylor Swift was voted eighth best guitar player. I wonder by whom and how and why. And maybe I should look into that. No, I think I'm just going to react and call names and say ignorant things and hurl insults and get into an argument with a complete stranger or 10 or 20 or 100.
Yeah.
And I don't
But
know if you know this, but Swifties, they'll hurt you.
yeah, they'll cut you.
They'll come right after you. They are not messing around. If you
Yeah.
they think you're attacking Taylor, I mean that's just a dangerous game right there.
Yeah. But one of the things that we do a lot when we talk about guitar players is talk about their gear. So I looked up Taylor Swift on a quit board, which is a thing that you can do, and it's known to be pretty accurate. They want to see pictures, they want some quantifiable information, they want confirmation. And so I'm going to tell you some of the stuff that she uses, and let's talk about her taste in guitars being absolutely friggin' awesome.
Oh, look at you.
Uh, Gibson SJ200, which is a big guitar and sounds amazing.
It's one of my
And she's,
favorite acoustic guitars ever produced.
yeah. And of course, she's got a custom one that's fantastic looking.
Yeah.
I see a picture of her wearing a leather dress playing a Fender Johnny Marr signature Jaguar.
Oh, really?
Yeah. White. She appears to like white guitars. Has been seen on stage live from New York City playing a 57 reissue Les Paul, which is 100% no joke as a guitar. Some other Gibsons, a Taylor 614 CE. Frankly, I don't know. Taylor, the company, should be throwing guitars at Taylor, the performer. They should just give her whatever she wants at all
Seriously.
times, because, I mean, how perfect is that, right?
I know.
And yeah, so she's got a big, beautiful Taylor 614, Gibson Hummingbird, which is a great, great
Another,
guitar.
say what you want about Gibson electric guitars.
Their acoustics are without parallel.
A
They
very
Gibson
different
is to a
story.
Yeah, I think Gibson is to acoustic guitars what Fender is to electric guitars,
I think they
and
make
vice
some of the
versa.
best. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, say what you will about Gibson's quality control and all that nonsense when it comes. That's a
Yeah,
Their acoustic division is a very different company in a very different location and with a very different mentality. Like it is just they work on a different plane.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a picture of Taylor Swift on I think it's like a looking at her house. She looks like she's wearing her jammies, but she's playing a pink Paisley Telecaster, which is
Hmm.
pretty cool.
Hmm.
There is apparently a signature Taylor Swift Baby Taylor guitar that has
Okay.
it looks like maybe she drew the rosette and signature. It's very cool.
I mean, let's be honest, that
Um
is a no-brainer, especially for
yeah,
influencing young guitar players as she does.
yeah. And she appears to favor big bodied guitars,
Hmm.
right? Another Taylor guitar that she's been seen with is the GS6, which is a Grand Symphony, no cutaway. It is a huge guitar.
Well, especially
And
compared to her. But she's a singer-songwriter, and you said she's a
and
strummer. She's looking
yeah,
for, she's not looking
projection.
right, not articulate, not fast. I want the chords out there, big, bold, harmonious. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she's the last two I'm going to mention to you is another Gibson, the Songwriter Deluxe. uh and the Taylor 656 12 string, which I can tell you, I've never owned one. I do have a 12 string acoustic. It's not a Taylor, it's an Alvarez. But you can deride somebody's guitar skills all you want, but if they can play a 12 string cleanly,
Hmm.
and she does play it cleanly. This is one of these videos that I watched. That's an impressive thing.
Mhm.
You know, I have big hands. I'm pretty strong as a guitar player. My calluses are well developed, and I struggle with a 12-string acoustic from time to time just because I'm not in the moment. I'm not committed to it.
Mhm.
And I watched a whole song of her playing an acoustic 12-string, and she never misses a note.
Eighth best in the whole world in the last 100 years. Isn't that what they said?
20 years. 20
Oh, okay.
years.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Oh, okay. Right. So she is picking some good gear. I would like to know when she plays live and plays electric guitar, what amps she is using. The only amp mentioned on this page is like a Yamaha Spark or something, one of those little, you know, Yamaha THR5 desktop guitar combo amp. It's got like a 3-inch speaker in it or something.
all right. I'm fairly
So,
certain she's not touring with that.
yeah. So, I mean, that's the conversation I want to have with Taylor Swift. I want to sit down and talk to her about her gear.
What is your
I don't want to
favorite
talk about,
distortion pedal?
well, I mean, I want to talk about how does she decide which guitar she's going to use for which song, because she could very easily stand up on stage and play one guitar all night, but she doesn't. I know my thinking when I switch guitars,
Hmm.
but that's the conversation I want to have with her. I want to ask her what is her amp? How does she decide? Who's her tech? That's the person I want to talk to, right? But I want to talk to her. I want to talk to her. Why did she pick the Johnny Marr signature Jaguar? I don't know, and I'm just spitballing here. I don't feel like Taylor Swift would be a big fan of the Smiths. She's way too happy for that.
you, you don't know. You don't know Dark Taylor.
You're right. I don't. And she's had some hard times, I'm sure.
Hmm. Yeah. You know what it's like to have to refuel your personal private jet? It's it's not easy
I
sitting
don't
there on the tarmac waiting.
no, it's not. But I will say this, even though, as I said, I'm not into her music, her gear is no joke. I would love to have pretty much
You know,
any of these guitars,
she
acoustic
has
guitars she's got.
she has expensive taste. She should probably watch her spending.
Yeah. That was a good one. I recognize humor when I see it, and
I,
that was it.
I
So
wonder
so
if
let me ask you
do you
this.
think Taylor Swift has to justify guitar purchases like you and I do?
No, I don't
Oh,
I don't think she does.
she's not one of us. She's not like us. Taylor's not like us.
Mhm. No.
All right.
I don't think Taylor Swift probably has to justify any purchase she ever makes ever,
Ever again.
ever again. She could buy my house and burn it down with me in it, and nobody would say a word to her.
Ah,
There was a really funny episode of Family Guy, which is not always funny, and it's a lot of times it's really problematic. But in the episode, Chris, the son in the family, asks Taylor to go to homecoming or prom or something with him.
mhm.
And she does, but then she turns around and writes a hate song about him that immediately goes to number one or something like that on the radio.
Sure.
And but he calls her out on it, you know,
Hmm.
and
As you do.
as you do. And she apologizes. She said, I just don't know how to react when I like somebody, so I write a hate song about them. And
Oh,
yeah, and it just kind of goes downhill from there. But I don't think they got her permission to do that episode.
oh,
I don't know. I don't know that she's actually the voice in it.
oh, okay. All
Uh,
right.
you know, because
So,
I don't know, they're a little hard on her. But
yeah.
um, so let's talk about, here's something else I want to know.
Mhm.
Thinking of the last 20 years and
Mhm.
guitarists who have come to prominence in the last 20 years, who would you say are some of the best?
Oh, well,
Like try and be objective. Like maybe you don't listen to their music, but you recognize these people for having a lot of skill with the instrument, and
okay.
they're relatively recent in popularity or visibility.
Oh, well, I'm going to be completely blunt. I am the wrong person to ask. I think we need to have my son on
That's a really good point.
because, yeah, I will tell you, I got to be completely blunt. I don't know if I know the names of the people that, I mean, I could tell you who I've heard, right? And, um, and I could tell you why their name comes up, but I believe there is a whole new wave of guitar players right now. Like, I don't want to call them Instagram guitar players because that's very reductive.
Yeah,
Um, but
but you're not wrong.
right, but I think it if you think about the players in the I'm going to just use his name, Tim Henson. Okay. Guitar players like Tim Henson. There's dozens of them, right? He has he and his band have sparked the copycats are coming out of the woodwork. And they are reimagining the instrument and what it can do and what it can sound like. So if you think about when you and I were growing up, it was a lot of distortion, it was a lot of like reverb and delay, it was, fast scales. And then if you move up a little bit, then it becomes like neoclassical, still lots of distortion, but there's a lot of sweep picking. Well, now there's this whole new thing. These guitar players are just mind boggling. First of all, a lot of them play super clean. So a lot of the
Yeah.
distortion's gone. Um, Highly compressed, which is that's an effect that went away a long time ago. We were not using compression. It like the 80s compression was big and then it went away. Now compression's back again. Super clean, not really highly affected, um, but just wild, you know, technique in terms of like sweep picking, finger picking, hybrid picking, lots of drones. Um, they're just it's a completely different style. And on top of that, it's being done over the with a backdrop of like hip hop and
Yeah.
like different, it's not like 1-2 anymore. It's a much different style. That whole new wave of guitar players, they're redefining and reshaping music right now. Um,
Mm.
Guys like Tosin who do a lot of like thumping on, like he plays an eight string and he does a lot of bass technique on the guitar where he's thumping with his thumb and doing a lot of
Thumbing the
finger
strings.
picking,
Yeah.
very percussive. That's reshaping the instrument. That's doing something with guitar that, you know, we weren't doing for the last 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
Um, um, what's his name? Mateus Asado,
Mm.
another fabulous guitar player, a little bit more traditional, but very R&B, funk, blues oriented, but just with this crazy good technique. And it's almost like Shred's coming back, but with a very different sound and feel to it. Because these guys do absolutely shred.
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, the reason why I didn't feel comfortable answering with a name is because the only person I know by name is Tim Henson, but I don't even think he's the even at this point is the only one. Like I feel like
Yeah.
there's a whole um and then like the guys from like Periphery. Um Again, like reshaping the instrument, alternate tunings, very low tunings, approaching their picking and their fingering technique in ways that we never did. Um, Using tones we would never use in ways we don't, using the studio as like an instrument in and of itself, things like that, like over editing, purposeful over editing. Um, I mean, Periphery has spawned dozens of copycat bands over the last, 10 years.
Yeah.
But Periphery lends themselves a lot to like Dream Theater. And if it wasn't for Dream Theater, you wouldn't have Periphery. But yeah, so I mean, that's like
Yeah,
the
there wouldn't
long,
even be a space for them.
right. So that's my long-winded answer. But if I do think there's some unbelievably talented musicians out, guitar players out there right now, just really reshaping and changing what the instrument is known for and what it can do. And it's kind of cool, but it's just I don't listen to enough of it. And I admit that.
Well, it may not surprise you to find out that I made a list,
Oh my God.
because I do that.
You are a list
I am a
person.
list maker.
You're a
So
journalist, is
I
what
came
you
up
are.
with a list of who I think are the 10 best guitarists of the last 20 years. So they've done,
10, 10 best, you're saying specifically.
I'm saying best. I'm putting my foot down. I'm saying these are the 10 best guitarists of the last 20 years. And I'm going to give them to you in reverse order from 10 to 1.
Okay, I like that.
So coming in at 9 and 10 are a team: Brent Hines and Bill Kelleher of the band Mastodon.
Okay.
Those guys are crazy good. And it only gets crazier from there.
They're crazy
Coming
good.
in,
I never, I have to comment. I never got into and listened to much Mastodon. What am I missing?
it's so early on, it's like crossing Yes with Black Sabbath,
Hmm.
right? Later on, they started to shorten the songs and make them a little more accessible. And the drummer started singing. Nobody knew he had this amazing voice until, I think, I don't remember how they figured it out, but somebody heard him singing. They're like, well, why aren't you doing that in the band? And they just continue to get better and better with every album they put out.
Hmm.
And the heaviness is still there, the depth is still there, the technique and the skill are still there. They're so good.
Okay. I must have completely missed the boat. So where should I start with Mastodon if I want to give them a fair
I
shake?
would start with Emperor of Sand and go back from there,
Okay.
because the
Okay.
the music, I feel like the older they get, the older the album gets, the less friendly they are. They require more effort to listen to, but such a good band.
Okay. All right. Sorry to digress, but I just wanted, for them to show up on your list. I
Yeah.
figured I might be missing something. Okay, go ahead.
Yep. Coming in at 7 and 8, it's another team: Joe Duplantier and Christian Andreu of Gojira,
Mm,
who
very
many
familiar.
people saw in the Olympics opening ceremony and thought, what in the hell is this heavy metal band doing with an opera singer on podiums outside this giant building? And we won't get into that. There's so much history in what they did. It it took my breath away to see it. One of
Hmm.
my favorite bands exploring their history
Right.
as a country the way they did,
Yeah.
in with such stark visuals, and of course pyro. Because
And
let's and they're the best band to ever come out of France. And to see them on international television was stunning. And they are so good. That band is so good.
Their drummer is ridiculous.
Oh, and that's Joe's brother,
Yeah.
Mario. um, Number 6, Guthrie Govan.
Oh, without a doubt.
Number 5, Derek Trucks.
Phenomenal guitar player.
Yeah. Number 4, Mr. Tosin Abasi from Animals as Leaders, excuse me. Number 3, and this might surprise you,
Taylor Swift.
Nita Strauss from Alice Cooper's band.
Wouldn't have seen that coming.
Yeah. And she is not just a technically skilled guitar player. She's also a really fantastic performer. She's so much fun to watch play. And I've seen some videos where she goes through her gear, super into gear, like nerdy, like we are about gear, which
Mm-hmm.
is always fun. And then coming in number 1 and 2, who I think are the 2 best guitarists of the last 20 years, Tim Henson and Scott LePage from Polyphia.
How about that? You and
Because
I.
Tim Henson gets a lot of attention,
Mm-hmm.
but if you watch them, they're playing together,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't mean like they're always playing the exact same thing. They're playing together.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
making the music together. And
Mm-hmm.
Scott LePage is every bit as skilled as Tim Henson. I think Tim Henson just has a more public persona.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
He's more comfortable with being outgoing and extroverted in social media, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my list of who I think are the 10 best guitarists of the last 20 years. Now, if we were starting to talk about the 10 most influential, I'd have to do a lot more research, because I don't know that Guthrie Govan is inspiring people to pick up the guitar.
He's inspiring them to put it down.
That's what I was just going to say. I know Derek, when I saw Derek Trucks, I became introduced to Derek Trucks about 15 years ago, which is well into his career. It inspired me to pick up slide again, which I had not played in a very long time.
Okay.
And I'm still not as good at it as I would like to be, but that's because I don't practice it as much as I should. And that's nobody's fault but mine. And then once we get, and here's the thing, right? Except for Derek Trucks, that list, I can't play anything that they play. And I'm a decent guitar player.
Okay.
I'm not making anybody's list of top 10 best, but I can hold my own. You put me on stage and I can keep up for the most part, but not with any of these guys or gals.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a conversation we can have another time where, when people compliment you on your playing or your songs and your head immediately goes to, you know, I'm not good. I know good and I'm not good. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you can't give yourself any credit because there's guitar players like this top 10. As long as there's a Guthrie, you can't call me a good guitar player, which isn't fair.
Right. Which
But
it's not,
no.
but
I like your list. I it's, hey, they're your 10 best, so I can't argue with it because it's your opinion. But I do like, it's interesting that you and I, for all intents and purposes, agree on the top 2, right?
Mhm.
So interesting. All right. So I think we all agree. I think the takeaway message is that Taylor Swift is the best guitar player, now and forever. Is that the message? Certainly the best to come out of Pennsylvania.
You know, uh, you know who else is from Pennsylvania?
Who besides me? Who?
Paul Gilbert is from Pennsylvania.
Get out! I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's from
How,
Pennsylvania.
how does he feel not being as highly regarded as Taylor Swift on guitar?
I think he's probably okay with it.
I mean, he didn't make this list.
No, no, he didn't.
I didn't know that Paul Gilbert was from Pennsylvania. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think he lived there until he went out to California to join MIT
Oh,
or
that's so cool.
GIT, excuse me.
Yeah, Tom Schultz went to MIT.
Yeah,
Awesome.
MI, Musicians Institute, MI.
MI. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh, well, thank you for a rousing discussion. I've learned a valuable lesson.
yeah, and I hope that the Swifties, when this episode goes viral because we hate Taylor Swift, which we do not,
We do not.
um,
We are not fans
and
of Aerosmith.
the Swifties hate listen to this episode. I hope that they will see it for what it is, which is drawing a distinction between skill, technical skill, i.e., best, and influential skill, i.e., most influential. And where I think Taylor is definitely one and definitely not the other. You know,
Well, I hope no one argues with you. Or if they do, in the comments, tell us, you know, tell us stuff. Tell us that you feel strongly that Taylor Swift is a phenomenal guitar player and that we're full of it.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And so we'll say goodbye, but we'll be back real soon with another controversial topic, and a Music That Matters episode as well.
Yeah.
So
Stay tuned for that.
yeah.
All right.